This is called Thoughts During My First Sound Bath. Through the swirl-shine stardust of the singing bowl's crystalline hallelujahs, the sound bather croons, picture a tree growing out from the center of you, its roots reaching as deep as you want, its branches stretching out as far as you want, and I get mad? For the record, I don't have anything against trees. Trees let me breathe, and some of them make fruit happen. And sometimes, if there's not too many ants crawling on a tree in the park and it doesn't look like a dog peed on it recently, I'll sit down and use its trunk as a backrest while reading a book and pretend I'm Frodo Baggins from the Shire, waiting for Gandalf the Grey to arrive with a wagon full of fireworks for Uncle Bilbo's 11th birthday party, not being able to fathom for a second that 45 minutes of movie time later, I'll be running for my life from a gaggle of stab-happy ring wraiths. You know how it is. One moment, your uncle is pontificating on how the road outside your door is more like a river and will sweep you off your feet to God knows where. And the next moment, you're watching his weird old tall friend Gandalf face down a giant demon made of shadow and flame and get dragged down into the abyss beneath the shattered bridge of Khazad-dûm. And didn't you kill, like, dozens of giant spiders in Mirkwood, Uncle Bilbo? Why didn't you teach me how to fight, Uncle Bilbo? I felt like a kid in a world of grown-ups for years, and it's not just because I'm the same size as one. Why give me your glowing sword and your mithril shirt without spending any of the time within the last 2 decades showing me how to defend myself, Uncle Bilbo? Did you want your adopted heir to be completely useless? Because I don't want to be this. I don't need your house or your stuff, Uncle Bilbo. I need survival skills, and you left without letting me learn any. I know you figured out how to slay anything short of a dragon over the course of your there and back again journey, and maybe that's why you assumed I'd do the same within my own adventure sink or swim pressure, but did you forget that my real parents drowned in the Brandywine River, Uncle Bilbo? Did you think my journey would be an act-by-act, scene-by-scene remake of yours? I don't mean to yell at you, Uncle Bilbo, but it sounds like you didn't have a backup plan for raising me if I didn't turn out to be exactly like you. And the sound bath reminds me to think of trees, so out sprouts a malorn from my sternum. It's one of those redwood-sized arboreal behemoths where Lady Galadriel built her bougie tree houses in Lothlorien, which then transforms into Old Man Willow, the ancient evil hobbit-eating tree with powers of hypnotism who only appears in the books. And then it becomes Telperion, the white tree of Valinor, who's like the oldest tree ever and also the moon's dad, if I'm remembering that correctly. I might not be, but I'm in the middle of a sound bath right now. What do you want me to do? Get up and locate my copy of the Silmarillion to double-check how accurately I'm recalling the minutiae of J.R.R. Tolkien's fabricated cosmology? I only read as much of the Silmarillion as I did because there was something about the experience of slogging through a book-bound mixture of tediously boring and incomprehensibly dense historical accounts, interspersed with poems and songs from ancient civilizations translated into archaic English that somehow makes me feel like I'm being a good boy. And then it occurred to me that's basically just what Bible studies were. Minus all the explicit moral prescriptivism and conditional approval from authority figures, which was a novelty back in high school, because the church I was raised in believed that all fiction is categorically bad, so I'd heard from half a dozen sermons that The Lord of the Rings contains both pagan and Catholic influences, which meant Tolkien was basically a Satanist. I wonder what it's like to be physically beaten up by fellow school children for being a nerd instead of emotionally beaten up by God and his spokespeople for being a sinner. I try imagining a tree growing out of me again, but I get a Venus flytrap instead, giant and cartoony. Now it's basically a piranha plant from Super Mario, spittle dribbling from Little Shop of Horrors worth of fangs in its maw, and it pulls itself out of my ribcage to reveal a humanoid body and limbs like an ent, and by the vascular deltoids of Eru Iluvatar himself, this piranha plant is jacked. This piranha plant makes Treebeard look like a wilting pansy. I started thinking about how some point during the Mesozoic era or thereabouts, the first carnivorous species of plant life debuted on Earth and began eating every prehistoric bug accustomed to walking all over them, and the survivors lived henceforth in fear that any green thing they thought was a doormat might turn out to be a death trap instead. Then the sound bath watered that seed of thought and grows this never-skips-leg day abomination, who I've decided to name Piranha Beard. And Piranha Beard uproots himself from my ribcage and tramples over hundreds of Mirkwood spiders before simply power-walking into Mordor. And as the sound bath lulls, I know I'm not going to solo a Balrog and then rise from death more powerful than before like Gandalf. I'm not going to redeem the collective failures of the disappointingly weak men in my bloodline by staging a final doomed stand at the black gates of Mordor for Frodo like Aragorn. I'm not going to recover from years of being manipulated into physical and mental infirmity by someone I trusted, and then lead a glorious cavalry charge for wrath, for ruin, and for the Red Dawn when Gondor calls for aid like King Theoden. I'm definitely not Samwise Gamgee, who fought through a fortress full of orcs in a dark cobweb-strewn lair full of Shelob, and who literally put Frodo on his shoulders and carried him up a whole-ass volcano in the heart of enemy territory because he believed that there's some good in this world and it's worth fighting for. I know I'm Frodo. I know that every cool action scene I'm involved in is one where everyone else is kicking ass, while I just trip over my own feet and get stabbed by the bad guys like a chump. But the singing bowls ring with power again, and the bumbling photo of me splits open like a freaky hobbit-shaped chrysalis, and out sprouts Piranha Beard, who eats all 9 ringwraiths for breakfast, and then eats the horses they rode in on for second breakfast. Then Piranha Beard picks up the one ring, slips it on one of his branch fingers, but he does not disappear. Instead, he glows, and begins speaking in a voice that reverberates with power akin to the elf lords of old, declaring he has come here to chew giant spiders and kick ass, and he's all out of giant spiders. And then he plucks the eye of Sauron from Barad-dûr and pops it with his teeth like eating the world's angriest, reddest grape. And then all the peoples of Middle-earth shall love Piranha Beard and despair.